They laughed at me during dinner. Again. My sister Callie twirled her wine glass and looked at me with that crooked grin she saves for pity. Seriously, Evelyn. All you do is sit at home and read those pointless books. No job, no boyfriend, no life. Are you even trying? My dad snorted. Maybe she's waiting for a prince from a novel to marry her. And my mom? She just smiled like it was all true. Like I wasn't worth correcting. Their laughter echoed. I didn't even blink. My name is Evelyn. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been underestimated so deeply that your silence became your sharpest weapon? I had just poured years of my soul into something they'd never once cared to ask about. They thought my room was a cave of laziness. They didn't know it was my war room. Every evening, while they mocked me from their designer couches, I built. I designed software architectures that reshaped markets. I negotiated deals under an alias. I reinvested smartly, moved in silence. I registered companies using my initials. I signed NDAs. I wore hoodies. I stayed invisible. I worked when the world slept. They thought I was wasting time. I was quietly building a $100 billion empire.
And tonight?
While Callie mocked me, I got a notification. The embargo on a feature article had lifted. The New York Times had just published a headline that read, "The woman who built a billion-dollar tech dynasty in total secrecy, meet Evelyn M. Hawke." They hadn't seen it yet. But in about 8 hours, their entire world, the one where I was just a girl who read too much, would shatter. Because tomorrow's front page was already printing. And their daughter, their disappointment, had just rewritten the narrative. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just whispered to myself, let them sleep in peace for the last time. By sunrise, the quiet was gone. I was still in my pajamas, sipping tea at the kitchen counter, when my mom's shriek cracked the walls. "Evelyn, what is this?" She stormed in, waving the newspaper like it was burning her hands. The photo on the front showed me, my real self, standing beside a supercomputer in a facility they never knew existed. Callie came running in behind her, still in her silk robe, mascara from last night smudged across her face. "Is this a prank? Evelyn, what is this crap?" I didn't answer. I just reached out, took the paper gently, and placed it on the counter like it was any other morning. "I told you," I said quietly. "Books aren't pointless." My dad walked in next, his face pale.
He didn't speak.
He just stared at the headline like it had insulted him personally. The silence was thick. Then Callie laughed bitterly. "There's no way this is real."
You?
"You can't even talk to a waiter without stuttering." She used a fake name. My mom snapped. "It says here she hid her identity. Evelyn M. Hawke? You're Evelyn Moore. What the hell is going on?" I stood up slowly. The M is for more. I used a variation so I could build in peace. So I could create without your voices in my head. Without your pity, your pressure, or your constant reminders that I'm not enough. I walked past them, every step heavy with the weight of years they dismissed me. "You told people I was unemployed," I whispered to my dad. "You said I was your greatest disappointment." He opened his mouth. No words came out. I didn't need them. They weren't losing a daughter that day. They were meeting the woman they never bothered to see. And while they drowned in confusion and regret, I got dressed. I had a press conference to attend. It was time the world met me on my terms, but not before I sent Callie one text. "Still think books are pointless?" The hotel ballroom was packed. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted my name like it had always belonged in lights. "Ms. Hawke, is it true you own Black Nova Systems? Did you really reject a $9 billion acquisition offer from Titan Tech last year? How did you hide it all for this long?" I smiled calmly. My silence wasn't secrecy. I told them. It was survival. For years, I operated behind aliases. Founded 11 companies. Merged 4. Invested in biotech, AI, sustainable infrastructure. I made billionaires look like interns. And every night I returned to that same childhood room, where they thought I was just reading. After the conference, I didn't go home. I checked into the Kingsworth, top-floor penthouse, full skyline view. My assistant had already stocked it with everything I liked: fresh peonies, peppermint tea, my favorite novels. Freedom didn't feel like champagne. It felt like breathing without permission. That night, my phone blew up. Dad called 8 times. I didn't answer. Callie sent a string of messages. "So proud of you, sis. Can we talk?" I didn't mean what I said about the books. Funny how fast mockery turns to flattery when there's money involved. But what got me wasn't the desperation. It was the pattern. Suddenly, they remembered me, now that the world wanted to. My assistant knocked gently. "Your mother's downstairs," she said. "She says it's urgent." I stared at the door. For a second, I felt the old tug, the child inside me who still wanted a mother's warmth. But I was no longer that girl. She'd been burned too many times. "Tell her," I said slowly, "that Miss Hawk doesn't receive guests without an appointment." The assistant nodded, and as the door clicked shut, I realized something else. It wasn't revenge I craved. It was release. And the more they knocked, the freer I became. The next day, they showed up at my office. Not the modest childhood home they always praised. No, this was a glass tower that touched the clouds. 29 floors of power. They stood in the lobby like strangers, my parents and Callie, dressed in their best, pretending they belonged. The receptionist didn't recognize them. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked politely. "We're her family," my mother snapped. "Tell her it's urgent." I watched it unfold through the camera feed in my office. They looked so small, so misplaced. I let them wait an hour, then another. Then I sent an assistant down with a single envelope. Inside it was a letter, handwritten. It said, "You ignored me when I had dreams. You laughed at me when I had plans. Now that I have power, all you want is proximity. But love isn't retroactive. You don't get to show up at the finish line when you booed every mile I ran." I watched them read it. My dad's face flushed with shame. Callie blinked fast, trying not to cry. Mom gritted her teeth, like it was an insult. But I wasn't trying to insult them. I was trying to explain what they never tried to understand. I wasn't the shy girl anymore. I was the storm they created and underestimated. Later that evening, my dad finally texted. Just one sentence. "Come home, Evelyn. We'll talk like a family." I typed my reply slowly. "You made it clear for years. I was never really family." Then I turned off my phone. Because that night, I had a dinner meeting with the governor. And for the first time in my life, I didn't need to be understood. I just needed to be heard. And now the whole world was listening. 2 weeks later, my story went viral. Podcasts, op-eds, speaking invites. I wasn't just a CEO anymore. I had become a symbol. The girl they dismissed had built an empire. The daughter they silenced had a voice louder than headlines. But with fame came pressure. Everyone wanted to know more. How did I do it? Why did I hide? And where was my family in all of this? I kept it vague. A complicated upbringing, I'd say. Sometimes silence is the best teacher. But then, Callie tried to flip the narrative. She went on a talk show, full hair and makeup, crocodile tears shining beneath studio lights. "I always believed in my sister," she said. "She was just so private. We didn't know how brilliant she was." Then came the dagger. "We supported her, always. As a family." I stared at the screen in disbelief. Support? This was the same girl who once flushed my college application down the toilet and laughed when I cried. The same girl who told her friends I was mentally unstable because I stayed home to code. She was trying to rewrite history in real time. I didn't speak out publicly, but I made a decision. I called up a documentary director who had pitched me a few days earlier. "I'll do it," I said, "but on one condition." "What's that?" he asked. "I want every page of every journal I ever wrote, every humiliation, every moment they laughed, shown exactly as it happened." And I gave him access to the journals, to the CCTV footage from my childhood bedroom, to every receipt that proved I built it alone. Because if Callie wanted the spotlight, she could have it, just not with my silence as her stage. The world would know the truth, and I'd speak it page by page. The documentary dropped on a Thursday night. By Friday morning, it had 18 million views. Titled The Girl in the Room, How Evelyn M. Hawke Built an Empire from Silence. It wasn't polished with soft music or cinematic filters. It was raw, stark. It opened with a grainy clip from our old kitchen. I was 12, holding a school award, beaming. My mom's voice cut through. That's not a real achievement. They probably gave it to you out of pity. Then another clip, Callie at 16, smirking as she ripped pages out of my journal on camera. She thinks writing will save her. She's so weird. She laughed. I didn't. The world saw it all. The overlooked girl, the taunts, the quiet rebellion. My story was no longer a mystery. It was evidence. And the backlash came swift. Brands dropped Callie from her influencer deals. My dad was forced to resign from his country club board after sponsors saw clips of his "just a disappointment" speech. And my mom? She released a statement calling the documentary edited and out of context. But the damage was done. I didn't celebrate. I just watched. Quietly. The same way I had watched them for years. When they celebrated without me, mocked me at dinners, smiled in public, and tore me down in private. This wasn't revenge. This was revelation. And still, they didn't understand. That night, Callie showed up at my condo building. Security called. "She's downstairs," they said. She looked upset. I walked to the window and looked down. There she was, shoulders shaking, holding a tablet. From that height, she looked like the girl I once shared a room with. The same girl who cut the heads off my dolls and blamed me for being too sensitive. I almost pressed the button to let her in. But then I remembered the final journal entry I wrote at 17. They do not deserve your peace just because they've run out of war. And I walked away from the window, because for the first time, I had nothing left to explain. 2 months passed. I didn't hear from them again. The headlines faded. The noise quieted. But my life? It soared. I inked a $600 million research deal with Stanford, launched a mentorship program for girls in underfunded schools, and bought the entire block where I once had to walk past neighbors whispering, "Poor Evelyn, she'll never make it out." I didn't look back until one letter changed everything. It was hand-delivered. No return address. Just my name, written in trembling script. I recognized it instantly. My mother's handwriting. Inside was a note. No apologies. No excuses. Just one line. "Your father had a stroke. He keeps asking for you." I sat with that sentence for hours. The same man who once said I was dead weight now clung to my name like it was medicine. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. But I remembered. I remembered standing outside his locked office door at 14, hoping he'd review my coding notebook. He never opened it. Never even looked at me. Just shouted, "Go read your silly stories somewhere else."
And now?
Now he wanted my presence like it could undo the years. I didn't visit. But I sent something. A copy of my book, the memoir that had just hit #1, titled, "Pointless Books, How I Built a $100 billion Empire in a House That Told Me I'd Be Nothing." Inside, I scribbled a note on the front page. "You always said I was wasting my time. Turns out, I was just investing it in the only thing that truly mattered, me." I don't know if he read it. I don't know if his hands could even turn the pages. But I know this. For once, he had to sit still and absorb my voice. No interruptions. No corrections. Just me. On every page. The call came 3 weeks later. "Your father passed this morning," the voice said. Flat. Routine. Like they were used to delivering news to estranged daughters. I thanked them and hung up. No tears. No collapse. Just a strange, steady quiet. They held a small memorial. I wasn't invited. But I went anyway. Not to grieve, but to witness the final chapter of the man who once told me I'd be nothing without him. The room was filled with polite faces. A photo of him stood beside a white bouquet. And there, near the back, my mother and Callie whispered like guilt wasn't meant for daylight. Callie spotted me and stood. For a second, her face lit up like maybe, I was there to reconcile. She opened her mouth. But I just walked forward. straight to the photo. I stared into his frozen eyes, the same ones that never looked up from a newspaper when I showed him my first code. And then, I placed something at the base of a stand. A single book. My book. The one they called pointless. The one that paid for the hospital wing bearing my name. The one that would outlive all of us. Then I turned around and walked out. No hugs. No closure speech. Just footsteps.
Steady.
Unapologetic. The following month, I bought their old house. Not to live in, to preserve. I turned it into a sanctuary for girls who dream too loudly in rooms too quiet. Every shelf lined with donated books. Every wall painted with a single quote. They said books were pointless. Turns out, they were the blueprint. And every time someone asked me how I made it, how I survived, I smiled and said, I read. Then I wrote. Then I built. Alone. And when they looked at me like I was a miracle, I whispered softly,
No.
I'm just what happens when you leave the quiet girl with a mind of fire and a room full of fuel.